Hey everyone, this is Music Tech Help Guy, and welcome to part 24 of my Music Theory for Producers course. In this video, I want to give you guys a basic overview of modes. Now, modes are essentially just other scales, including the major and minor scales, other scales that allow us to tap into some other harmonies and some other tonalities outside of the major and minor scales, the scales that we traditionally use in popular music. Now, one thing I want you to be aware of is that modal theory can be a very complicated thing, and it's a much deeper topic than I'm making it in this video. But essentially, I want to show you how you can figure out all 7 of your modes. Let's start by relating the modes back to the tonic of a C major scale, which is the first note of a C major scale, which is C. And C major is just all white keys, C to C. Now, if we were to take that same C major scale, C to C, all white keys, no black keys, no sharps or flats, and shift that whole scale up 1 key, starting on D, the second note in C major, we get something that sounds kind of like D minor, but it's not actually D minor, because D minor has B flat in it. What we get is what's called the D-Dorian mode. So just think of modes as other scales that we can use to expand our tonality. So let me give you the names of all 7 modes, because the C major scale and the A minor scale are actually both modes as well. They have modal names. So if we were to start on C here and do all white keys up to C, we get C major, but we get what's also called the C Ionian mode. So that's the Ionian mode. Moving up to D, the second scale degree, we end up with the Dorian mode, like I said earlier. If you move up to the third scale degree, you get the Phrygian mode. If we go up to the fourth scale degree, we get the Lydian mode. If we move up to the 5th scale degree, we get the Mixolydian mode. If we move up to A, we get A natural minor, also known as the Aeolian mode. And if we move up to B, we get the Locrian mode. So those are our 7 modes: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. Now you'll find some of them more useful than others, but they're really cool to incorporate in compositions to expand the tonality past just major and minor scales. But they do have very characteristic sounds and they're not always useful for, especially for popular music, but sometimes if you inject a little bit of modal tonality into your music, it can be something that's interesting. So again, starting on C major here, that's C Ionian. Let's move up to D. This is D Dorian. Moving up to E, we have E Phrygian. Moving up to F, this is F Lydian. Sounds a lot like a major scale with one difference. Moving up to G, we have Mixolydian. And moving up to A, we have A Aeolian. And then pretty much everyone's least favorite scale, or what I would consider the least useful scale, but some people would disagree, is the B Locrian scale. And if we move up one more, now we're just back to C again. So those are the 7 modes. Now, in this example, I'm relating them all back to the tonic of C major. D Dorian is the 2 of C major. You can do that with any keys. I don't want you to think that D Dorian is the only Dorian scale. You can have an F sharp Dorian scale. You can have an A flat Dorian scale. It's just a matter of how you relate it back to another key. So for instance, if I took B major here, so here's B, here's the B major scale. If I started on the second note of the B major scale, which is C sharp, and played that same pattern, I know, bad fingering there, that would be the C sharp Dorian scale. If we moved up to 3, this would be D sharp Phrygian. So that's just how you can relate these back to the tonic note of a major scale. Now you can also interpret chords with these. Like let's say, for instance, one of the things I showed you guys in a previous video is in major scales and major keys and minor keys. There's a big relationship between, say, your root or tonic triad, the 1 chord, and the 5 chord. In modal music, that relationship isn't as strong. But you can take any modal scale and form chords out of it. So if we started, say, on like D Dorian here, D Dorian is used, or Dorian in general, is used a lot to get sort of like that medieval sound. So like I wanted to say like the Game of Thrones sound, but I've never even heard the soundtrack to Game of Thrones. I know it's a tragedy. One of my favorite ones is the Phrygian scale. It's basically a lot like minor, but it's got this really dark tone to it. But you can create chords just like we did using major and minor scales and major and minor keys. So let me show you one more way to figure these out that I actually find more useful than relating them back to the tonic. Okay, so the other way I like to think about modes is how can I relate them back to major and minor keys by altering major and minor scales to create Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, and Locrian. Now, we already said Ionian is already just a major scale. So I'll just say same as major scale. And we said the Aeolian scale is the same as natural minor. So I'll say same as natural minor. All right. Dorian. Dorian is just like minor, natural minor, except that it has a raised sixth. So if you take the 6th note and move that up a half step, you get Dorian. So here's A minor. Here's A Dorian. So Dorian is the same as natural minor. I'll say nat minor. And then raise 6. Phrygian. Phrygian is also the same as natural minor, but you lower the 2nd note. So let's go back to A Aeolian or A natural minor. Let's lower the 2nd note. And you get Phrygian. Okay, so whereas the Dorian and Phrygian modes, we related these back to the natural minor scale and then raised 1 note or lowered 1 note, with Lydian and Mixolydian, we're going to relate this back to major scales. So for this, now I have C major in my piano roll here. So Lydian is the same thing as major, but you raise the 4th note. So here's C major. Let's raise the 4th. And you get the Lydian mode. Next, let's figure out Mixolydian. Now, Mixolydian is used a lot in major key rock music, where you have a song that's in a major key, but you lower the 7th. And that's what Mixolydian is. It's the same as major, but you lower the 7th. So let's take our 7th scale degree, pull B down to B flat, and we have the Mixolydian mode. Now, Locrian is really the weirdest of the modes, in my opinion, because it's the one mode of the 7 that doesn't really sound like it resolves with any finality. And part of that is because you're altering 2 notes from minor, is the way I like to think about it. The way I like to think about this is it's the same as natural minor, but you lower the 2nd and you lower the 5th. So instead of having that perfect 5th between the tonic and the 5th note, like you have with pretty much every single major and minor scale and every single mode other than Locrian, you have this sort of diminished sound to it. Locrian almost sounds, it's not really called the diminished scale, but it almost has an irresolute diminished sound to it. So I've got A minor here again. Let's lower the second, so B becomes B flat. Let's lower the fifth, so E becomes E flat. And now we have A Locrian. Just sounds very irresolute to me. All right, guys, so those are your 7 modes. I'm not really going to get too deep into like chord theory with them. Just use the same techniques I've showed you before, where you find your 7 chords within each scale, just like we did with major and minor keys. You can do this with all of these modes, and you can come up with some new tonalities that are different from Ionian modes and or the major scales and minor scales. If you're looking for a really good example in popular music, it's not pop music by any means, but in popular music that uses a lot of modes, go check out the Injustice for All album by Metallica that came out in like 88 or 89, maybe it was 87, I can't remember. It's a great album that uses a lot of modal riffs and a lot of modal chord progressions, and really is one of Metallica's most technical, or probably Metallica's most technical album. And it's really where I first started learning about modes. If you're a rock and roll guy, you'll appreciate it. If you're a hip hop or pop person, you may not appreciate it as much, but I don't really have any examples of that I know of, at least. And if you do know that some examples of modal music in pop and hip hop music, please leave them in the comments below just to share with other people. But I don't personally know of any other good modal examples of pop and hip hop music that I'm aware of. So anyway, guys, that's your modes: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I'm also on Twitter now, so I'll share content there and post all of my videos there as well. So get on there and follow me as well. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.